Hey, it's Ross Young. Part 2, Moving to Thailand. This book right here, and my wife is the most organized woman I know, is everything we had to do to bring our dogs to Thailand. We have books literally on everything. And we did here. Check this out. Okay, just to get an idea of how organized she is. There is a notebook here for each individual thing. You'll find taxes for each year, immigration paperwork for visa renewal. That whole area here is for the business, for the resort. What we needed to do to bring the dogs. At the time, we had 4 Shih Tzus, of which we still have 2 of them. 2 of them have since moved on to the doggy heaven in the sky. So the first thing I did was started looking up online, what can I bring the dogs? Because if I couldn't bring the dogs, that was going to be a real problem, because my wife just could not handle moving if we couldn't bring the dogs with her. And sure enough, not a problem. There is a company that will do it for you, and it was super duper expensive. I don't recommend doing that, but if you don't want to mind doing your paperwork yourself, it's certainly possible to do it all yourself. In fact, everything we ever did for immigration, whether it was visas, my fiance visa for bringing the wife over, my daughter's visa to bring her to America, my visa, my retirement visa, and my marriage visa, all were done just by us. None of that paperwork is very challenging or difficult. It's just time consuming. And if you have time and money, I would invest the time, because money, it's easier to spend your time than it is to spend your money. So what did we need to do to bring our dogs? Let me see if I can find some of the stuff we needed to provide. We needed to provide a certificate of sterility. We needed to show that all of our dogs had been spayed or neutered, which I didn't really have, so I had to go take all the dogs to the vet to get a certificate of sterility for each one of them. We needed to get a certificate of vaccination for each one of the dogs. And the Thailand required a special vaccination that they don't give in Los Angeles because it's not prevalent in there, and it didn't make sense to do it. And they were very worried about giving it to one of our dogs. They said, well, we can give it to your dog, however, we can't be responsible if she should die from it. What? Yes, because there's been one vaccine they've shown in older dogs, if they get it, they literally can die instantly from it. It is I want to say it's the Bortella virus. Interesting that there's a vaccine for corona. That's kind of funny, as I'm looking back on it. And of course, they had to have their rabies vaccines. That was very important. And we had to have a certificate that they received their rabies. And as I'm going through the paperwork here, I have paperwork for each one of the dogs. And each one of the dogs has their own, paperclip folder of each item. So they're going to have their certificate of vaccination, certificate of sterility, and history of vaccines. So like this is one history of vaccines for one of my dogs. If you don't have this information, do not think you're going to be able to bring your dog to Thailand. Just fair warning. The next thing we needed to do is get an import certificate. So we needed to be able to prove, we had to get permission to bring the dogs from the United States Department of Agriculture, of all places. I wouldn't expect the Department of Agriculture to do this, but we had to go by the LA airport, and I had to pay $76, which you can see here. Here we go. Where is it? Come on, get in focus. There we go. Somewhere over here. The fee was, there it is. $76. So, had to pay $76 for animal, birds, and pets. And this was to allow us to export the dogs to Thailand. And I'm looking to see if that was $76 for each. one, because I don't remember. And you had to pay it online. This was not something you could just go to the office. You have to make an appointment online, pay online, and then you show up. And we were at the office for about 45 minutes, and they gave us this piece of paper. We then had to go to the consulate in Los Angeles, and we had to apply for an application form for import for animals through Thailand. And we had to have an address of where we were going to be living. And the document here, let's see if I can show you here. Don't need to dox myself here. I don't care. The address don't matter anyway. It has to show you, it's in English and in Thai. And you put in here your name, your citizen, the address where you're going to, your phone number, passport number, when your passport expires, what type of dogs are you bringing in, and you sign for it. And then I had to get an email. I have the email here. It's from the Suvarnabhumi Airport Animal Quarantine Station. And it says, "Dear sir, please find the attached file for a copy of import permit for requirement for your dogs. The importer should send the import permit to the duty veterinary authority of country of origin in order to prepare, inspect, test, and certify these imported animals in compliance with the animal health requirement set by the Department of Livestock Development of Thailand." So we had paper sent to us, and that was the certificate of sterility and vaccines that somebody, and it had to fill out. And it had to be an accredited veterinarian. They were very specific about what type of veterinarian could do it. It couldn't be just your run-of-the-mill vet. They had to have a specific certification. So our normal vet did not have it, so we had to go to a different one. And then after you do all this, they give you a passport for your animal. And that was fun. If you live in California and probably many other areas, usually they always offer low-cost vaccinations put on by the ASPCA. In this particular case, it was a Southern California veterinary clinic, which they offered many different areas, which times that you could get your vaccines for free, sponsored by the state. So they also offered licensing and microchips if you wanted to do that. But we were able to get the rabies and distemperment paid for by the city as their way to get people to vaccinate their dogs. It's they call it for low cost, but it is basically because the fee to do it is low, and it's to get more people to vaccinate their dogs. Because a lot of people don't do that in America. You'd be surprised. A lot of anti-vaxxers out there. All right. So now that you have all your paperwork, here's the rub on that. It has a expiration date. You can't do this. Some of this stuff has to be done within 72 hours of flying. Now, if you think about it, I'm in the last 72 hours, I'm closing on my house. We're getting rid of the last of our stuff. And during those 72 hours, I now need to go run around and make arrangements for our dogs so that they can get their proper paperwork so that we take them to the airport, they'll be able to get on a flight. Now, we had already investigated the work prior to that, and knowing that the only airline that was going to be able to take all 4 dogs on the same flight, and that is a real issue if you have a lot of animals like we did. If you just have one, it's not as big a deal. It was Thai Airway, which we didn't mind because we like Thai Airway and we had a lot of points with them. So Thai Airway says, yes, we can do all 4 of your dogs, but it will have to be on this flight. This was 6 weeks prior. We reserved that space. We purchased our ticket 6 weeks prior to leaving. Literally, we purchased our ticket on the same day we listed our house for sale, hoping that we would be able to sell our house, close on it, and still be able to get everything lined up perfectly to keep all this paperwork from expiring. Very challenging, very stressful. So the one thing I can tell you is if you're planning on bringing a pet, do your homework. Look for the right airline that's going to have the shortest layover in another country, because you don't want your dogs cooped up in a crate for any longer than they absolutely need to be. we were able to fly from Los Angeles to Bangkok with layover was 19 and a half hours, which was fantastic for timing. We had a extended layover that we shouldn't have had in Japan because of a delay at the airport, but other than that, everything went fine. Getting to the airport, we then had to go to a special section of the airport to go pick up your dogs. Luckily, that section is about 40 feet from the door to exit the airport, which was very helpful from the time, because we'd already cleared customs and immigration. The last thing we needed to do was go to this one section to grab our dogs with the rest of our luggage. But we were already cleared from one area to go. Now we had to go to the next one. They were essentially right there by baggage claim, but it was after you passed baggage claim, if I remember correctly. But we were able to get the dogs, shoot outside, and they were all happy to use the facility, pee on the concrete sidewalk. They were just so happy to do that. And they were so happy to see us after being cooped up in these little crates for 18 hours. Now, one thing we did was we purchased larger than required crates, so the dogs had more room to move around in them. They tell you to put food and water in there, but the dog's not going to want to eat or drink much on the plane. They're kind of freaked out by it. They did tell us they do leave a light on in that area, so they're not just sitting in a blank, dark space where they can only hear each other bark at each other. They actually could see each other. So I hope that was true, because our dogs came back really happy. They didn't seem stressed at all. They were just happy to see us. But that was what it took to bring the dogs. Veterinarians, certificates, emails. It was ridiculous. So this was part 2 of the relocation from America to Thailand. Hope you're enjoying this series. If you like it, subscribe. If you know somebody who might be interested, refer it to them. Look forward to part 3 coming out soon.